Hey everybody out here in the California Delta getting ready for the June 24th and 25th Yamamoto Big Bass Challenge right here at Russo's Marine at the California Delta. Here with Delta Guru, Andy Cuccia. Andy, we're gonna go out here and here's the goal. We want to make sure that you guys know how to get one of those hourly checks. We're gonna have 5 seats every hour for 6 hours for 2 days. You're gonna try to get one of those checks with the biggest bass of that hour. Andy?
Well, you know, Vince, as tough as the Delta's been fishing, this is actually going to set up very well for the entire field.
Okay, because, how's that?
Well, you know, the fish are really late spawning and they're not in areas where everybody's looking. And we're going to show you a few things today and some baits where you can get in and get some. We got a new wave of fish coming up to spawn right now, and they're in areas where people aren't looking for them. And we're going to show you some baits and tactics. So these folks out there, you could probably weigh a 3 or 4 pounder in and win an hour this year.
Okay.
The potential for that to happen for our clientele and our participants is really high, to where they're not having to catch 8 and 9 pounders to get a check in this thing or a #1 seat. We're going to show you how to do that.
Good. We're going to go out there and you're going to show us some techniques on how to get one of those seats at the Yamamoto Big Bass Challenge next weekend, June 24th and 25th, right here on the California Delta. Let's go.
Okay, so first and foremost, if you're going to fish this Yamamoto Big Bass Challenge, especially this time of year in the springtime where you've got fish up bedding, the absolute #1 bait that has probably won more money in this event is a Yamamoto Senko. Now, I prefer when they're spawning to use the 6-inch Senko. A lot of guys will wacky rig the 5-inch. Some guys will even throw that great big 7-inch. But for these shallow areas like this where you're fishing 6 to 0 foot and you're working spawning bedded bass, that 6-inch Yamamoto Senko is going to trigger a lot of strikes, and it's liable to trigger the big one to get you that #1 chair. I prefer to use an offset round bend hook. The reason I prefer a round bend hook is because it really is designed for long skinny worms versus an EWG hook that is designed for wider, fatter worms. This thing fits in there so it's nice and straight, creates a slender profile, and your baits don't get torn up as much as they do fishing an EWG hook. This bait, it's a do-nothing bait, folks. You throw it out there to an open pocket, a shiny brown spot you think might have a bed in it, a pocket of tules, the edge of the grass, you just throw it in there and you let it sit, and the bait does the rest of the work for you. The less you move that bait, the more likely that you're going to get a big bite. Okay, that's bait #1. Everybody on this river is going to be throwing a Senko. Another one that you can throw if you're not using that Senko, I like the cut tail, the big 7 3/4 inch cut tail. It's got the same plastic composition as the Senko versus the rest of Yamamoto plastic, but it has a very unique action that's a lot different than a Senko, and if you're in a pressured area, that's a bait that can work. So those are 2 baits, a weightless bait, Senko or that cut tail that you can use up in these shallows. Another thing right now, you know, this is the time of year for top water. A lot of guys are out there throwing frogs and they're throwing big wake baits and so forth. But when you're up in the shallows like this, especially where you've got spawning bass, a popper, Yamamoto makes one of the finest little small poppers. It's called a Sugoi pop. Anything that's in a perch bluegill kind of color this time of year is perfect. The key when you're fishing this bait is you want it nice and calm and glassy like what we have in here today. And you want to fish that thing as slow as you can possibly fish it. You throw it out there, you give it 2 little quick pop, bloop bloop, spliss spliss, let it sit, and then just give it a little twitch. just so that it creates rings around the bait. The thing that you're going to find, you're not going to get a great big huge explosion on this bait because these fish are guarding. Okay, they could be guarding fry, they could be protecting their nest. It's just going to be a little swirl around that lure. Wait for it to load up, set the hook and reel them in. I highly recommend using braid that floats on top to keep that bait in position, and little twitches will allow that thing to just move and create. We're not on a lake with spotted bass. You don't want to fish this bait too fast. You want to fish it extremely slow. The last bait that I would have on, you know, we've got a lot of pre-spawners and you got a lot of post-spawners, which means you're going to have fish coming up out of deep water. My number one choice for that is a jig and Yamamoto flapping hog. That flapping hog on that crawdad is an extremely productive bait. I like using right now, I like using that 4-inch flapping hog in watermelon red, and the reason being is, and we tried to catch one earlier and missed it, the crawdads here on the river right now are red. There are red crawdads everywhere, especially up in the shallows where these fish are right now. We're taking a green pumpkin and brown jig, and we're attaching that flapping hog to that thing as a trailer. Now here's a trick for those of you that complain about, you know, you lose your flapping hogs all the time because the plastic's so soft. Don't thread it down through the center. Take that thing, put it through the main head of that body first and slide it all the way up, and then turn it around and flip that flapping hog through. Okay, it does two things. A, it causes that flapping hog to stand up, which means those fish have got to come down and get it from above. They're not going to get it from the side if that thing's laying flat. The other thing it is they can't pull it off. Okay, you're going to catch 2 or 3 fish, maybe 4 fish out of one flapping hog. But that's a bait that I would be using, especially if I'm fishing outside weed lines and little current eddies and so forth, where fish are moving into these flats or they're moving out of these flats. That jig and crawl could catch you the bass of a lifetime and put you in that #1 seed on any given hour. Give those 3 baits a try, folks. Those are must baits I think you got to have at all times. There are a lot of other baits. The other nice thing about that flapping hog is you can punch it. With all the surface canopy we got here, that flapping hog's very commonly used by the guys who like to punch while fishing this event. Get out there, the flapping hog, the weightless Senko and cut tail, and a Yamamoto popper. You're going to catch fish and get a chair in this event.